me tonight. They got to see me.
I think if you got a guy like that, you go like that, 6'4", guy, you got to trust.
Everybody watching tonight. So I tell you what, if you get fired into the next, you're in the wrong business. We control this. We run this. And anybody coming out of the house,
they got Jordan Davis last season. They bring Fletcher Cox back in Philly. So I'm sitting there like, we need to put something on this offensive line to combat that. What's going on? Welcome back, everybody. The 2023 season is now behind us. Things did not go as planned at AT&T Stadium a couple weekends ago, but hey, we got the 2 seed, and they did not come through.
Look, man, everything we thought, man. And I think, most of us felt that way. Like I said, we all had that nervous feel. Like, could they let us down again? Like really, could they do that? And I just blame me for feeling like this year was different. You know what I'm saying? Like, look, it's been a little while since we've been on here. We ain't been ducking no smoke. It's been little things. Shelly, he been on vacation. We finally kind of getting back in the tune of things, man. And I think now that, all of those emotions that obviously happened like right after that, that we can get those out the way. Now we can kind of sit back and kind of talk about the things like what actually went wrong. Like what happened in Dallas, man. We, like you said, we got the 2 seed. And then you think about like the better team and all those things that we felt, defensively, I felt like, we was the better team. I felt like we had the matchups. We knew what some problems they could present, but I felt confident in my guys, and can't knock me for that. We had a hell of a season, but I think our aspirations was a lot bigger than that, man. To come out here and be I guess one of the first team ever to lose to a 7 seed. And all the networks and all the things they said about us to say, what will go wrong, and that we was going home and everything. They said, look, what can I say, man? At the end of the day, we sitting on the couch and we watching the playoffs again, man. Feels very familiar to say the least.
It's crazy too. So I was listening to Lombardi's GM Shuffle earlier today, and he said that, or I guess it was last week, he said that what he heard coming from the stadium and like pregame warm up was Dallas was just acting like their shit don't stink. Like they were acting like it was going to be a rue. They were going to go in there, take care of business, and head on to host Detroit the following week or whoever, right? But like how are you not prepared in a playoff game at home, bro? When you've been so prepared at home, Matt LaFleur, Jordan Love, like they're playing with house money, and they came out and dog walked us in our house. Like that does not add up, man.
And I don't know. And going off of your comment where you say, hey, they felt like, we was just gonna do this and that. Well, it's that balance, right? I didn't want us to be tense, right? We talked about that San Fran game when he was like, hey, they was nervous and and they didn't look like they was ready to play. And then you have the complete opposite where you say, like, I just wanted y'all to be loose, just come out here, feel good. And did they overthink? Did they overlook Green Bay? That's definitely a question to ask, but it's like, how could you, in the magnitude of that moment, like what is it? What is the underlying issues, man? Like we've always had the good teams. You think about all pros and Pro Bowls and all these things. We're always near the top of the league. Dak Prescott on the back of him having a MVP caliber season, like who, like if you had to place blame on anybody, like where's the blame for you going? Like, just talking this one. And then maybe we can kind of take that a lot of different directions after that.
The coaching staff, 100% the coaching staff. But I think if we're gonna get deep with it, I think it's got to go all the way up to the top, and that's Jerry, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we don't got to dig too much into that if you don't want to. But I think whatever game plan was put in place by McCarthy was either not appropriately distributed to the players or just wasn't executed properly.
It's just weird. Look, let it hang. That's what we're here for. I do feel like it's both. Like players got to execute, but as well as that, the coaches got to put them in the best position. And it was just some things for me that I was like, what are we doing here? And also things that looked off, like the Dak and CD connection just right away. Just looked off. They wasn't on par. Brandon Cooks, even on the interception that obviously Jair Alexander got, is like he didn't run his route to the. I guess the ability that Brandon Cooks who's so technically sound and gets in and out of his break. I'm just like, what are we doing? Like what is it? And then the thing that baffled me the most, like we are not a zone team. Like we've ran man all year long. We got man corners. Probably our best corner, who's a zone corner, is Trayvon Diggs. Trayvon Diggs is not in the building, right? We've made our hay off of playing man, sticking guys like that, letting guys get, get after you. As far as the pass rush, I don't understand. Like for this game, how many times did you just see receivers just running open? It's third down and you got Micah dropping the coverage, and the guys just sitting there. I don't understand that. Like, get up in there, press some guys up, let your pass rushes eat, send Micah down in the box, like whatever you got to do, but don't sit back there and give a young quarterback confidence, which is one of the things that going into this game worried me the most. I was like, you don't want to allow that. I never understood why, when the game started, they deferred. I always ask you that question: why
Hmm.
defer? If you're at home, you're putting up 40 some points a game, you accept the ball and you go down there and punch them in their mouth so you can play your style of play. Don't give them the opportunity to get some confidence on the first drive. And the little things like that, and then the penalties and all those things don't help. One of the most undisciplined teams I can say. But if you want to talk higher up and things like that, we can do that too. Like I felt like Jerry played a part, and I'm gonna let you have the floor here. But I just felt like one of the main things was going into this one when he asked him, about job security and things like that. And he got to understand that at times it's okay not to be present in the media, or it's times not to, I guess, answer that question. It's not the time for you to say, well, if you lose this game, this was happens. Like, what type of effect does that put on your coach? For one, he feel the pressure. What type of effect does that put on the players themselves, who feel like maybe they love playing for McCarthy, and maybe if they don't perform up to par, then maybe the head coach itself is gone, and maybe that adds extra pressure on everybody. And then after the game, you're in the locker room again. Your face is shown. I seen the clip of you crying. I try to take that serious. It was a little funny to me, but if you're thinking about what's been consistent, a lot has changed, right? But the coaching staff has changed from Jason Garrett to these people. But Jerry himself has always been there, been the GM. What has to change? What has to change?
So, kind of, I don't know, like thinking about it, and I'm not trying to overreact here, right? But CeeDee Lamb coming out of college, he didn't want to rock 88. Jerry put that on him. So now he's got this like expectation of, now you're 88 for the Cowboys now,
Yeah,
right? You're the quarterback for the Cowboys. Now you have this expectation. No, you're the coach of the Cowboys. This is what you're supposed to do, right? And Jerry's always funneling it to the radio, this, and that. But he's just too vocal. Like, he's too vocal, and you shouldn't be headed into a playoff game wondering if you're going to get fired after today, right? You made
yeah.
the playoffs. You should be 100% backing your coach, saying, like, look, Mike did a fantastic job this season. I really hope he can come out and continue to execute in this playoff game. Don't, when the reporter's like, is McCarthy gone? He's like, well, we'll see how the game goes. Like, don't put that pressure on him for what?
And it's rough, right? Like, you know, we all got different situations, and to go back to the emotion side of it, like during that game, boy, I was sick, man, and I did have a weird feeling that day, but it was the, like, I guess the hope in me, like, nah, you keep trying to tell yourself, hey, it's different. So like I'm watching and I see how it starts, and I'm just like, well, okay, that's fine. I think I texted you at one point. I was like, look, we fine here. Even when we was down 14, I'm like, we fine. Just got to put some points on it. Just like when it transpired, it just kept spiraling out of direction. Then the pick sixes and Dak, it just, and then him himself, I cannot let him not get the blame for that loss as well. Cause it just seems like when everything is not perfect, like, or I could say in the biggest moments, he just seems like he tries to do too much, the hero ball, and you know, as a leader, and how calm he is, and we see what type of quarter. Like, tell me this, like, I love that. I love him. And then if you ask me, are we going to keep him around? What other options do we have, right? But at
Yeah.
some point, like, what I mean, this was your season to change the narrative, man, and I hate that for him. I must say
Hmm.
that I hate it, man.
No, and I think too, like that added pressure for Dak being the quarterback of the Cowboys, that does not equate to being the quarterback for the 49ers, for the Ravens, for the Packers. Like, it is not the same thing, right? Quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys is the quarterback of America's team, and he's got that weight on his shoulders all the time. And the media will ride his nuts when he's doing well and then kick him when he's down, right? So it's like these fans, like, obviously Dak's that dude. We got the Dak hoodie on, right? Like, Dak's that guy. But Dak improved and played his best season of football through 17 games, right? There was hiccups along the way. And then if I told you, like, if it was an 18 game season and I was like, hey, bro, Cowboys went 12-6 this year, you'd be like, oh, nice. Like, that's a good season. You know what I mean? You're about
Yeah.
75%. However, that 18th game was in the playoffs, right?
I, it's the play. Like I would say this. This is the thing, right? When you think about since we've won our Super Bowl, right? And I guess even over these last years, everybody don't get a chance to go to the dance. I must say,
Mhm.
it's tough. We all know it's tough. And even when you get to the dance, you don't win it. We see the aftermath of that. We see Philadelphia. We see what the Rams went through. Like it's a tough business, right? But like being the franchise that the Cowboys are, like obviously our aspirations are we're supposed to be America's team. It's a lot bigger than others, and everybody feels this way to a certain point. Everybody has Super Bowl aspirations, but obviously for us, man, it's like we're trying to get back to them glory days. What Jerry Jones said, that glory hole. We're trying to get to that glory hole, right? And then like we made, as far as teams that has won two Super Bowls in the span. Let's be honest, it hasn't been a lot. We're not the only one. San Fran is another one of those teams, right? But for us, man, we haven't got to the NFC Championship game.
Right.
That's that's something that's even bigger, right? And you look at since the format has changed, all the teams in the NFC, the only two teams that haven't won well, not one who haven't went to an NFC Championship game. The
Us in
command
Washington,
the
right?
Commanders in Dallas. That's not the conversation I want to be a part of, man. And that means like teams have the Lions, and teams have tanked, and 0-16 team, and the Giants who we look is terrible. Like all of these roller coasters, right? As much as talented as we are, and streamlined as we've been, we always been here and always had the talent. You mean to tell me these teams have tanked, had bad situations, bad quarterback sprees, and
Coach to
went
coach.
through went through 4 or 5 coaches, and they've still been to an NFC Championship game before us? And you
Right.
can't tell me that settles you inside, and it makes you think. It comes back to the question of, well, what has to change, man?
The only
You
thing
know?
that's been the same. And that's Jerry, right?
Yeah, I think so. If I must speak for everybody, Will McClay, like we can go through the list. Will McClay, one of the best GMs. You know what I mean? If he was available, teams would be lining up to get him as far as talent acquisition, right? Great at what he does. From a coordinator standpoint, Dan Quinn, people love him. And
Yeah.
and I would say, like we talked about what he did, like I don't know, it's weird. What I mean, I still love Dan Quinn, but teams were still on to have a Dan Quinn as a coordinator, one of the best in the league. Mike McCarthy, like I must admit, like for this season, what he did for Dak, had Dak played one of his
Phenomenal.
best years.
After talking Kellen out the building.
CD, number one receiver, and he's put himself in a conversation for one of the best in the league. Defensive players, we got a Micah, we got guys, we got DeMarcus Lawrence, and we got all of these pieces, right? It's like what are we missing? Like each year, like we see the talent, we've seen the intensity, we've seen the play, and then like now we can go into the issues within the issues, right? You know, like for you, like what I mean, going into this thing we had words, right? But what needs to change? What do you feel like? Obviously, we can't change Jerry Jones, right?
Right.
But what do you feel like just moving forward? It's kind of even tough to kind of get into this next season. And obviously we'll go into the draft and things like in the future, but just from I guess a high up standpoint, without getting too much into detail, like what are some of the things that you're looking for?
So, and it's tricky too, because to me, like you kind of think about Mike McCarthy, right? And so 2020, he shows up. I think that's the year Dak busted his leg. 12 and
Yeah.
5, 3 straight years. One playoff win. We won't even count the 2020 season, right? One playoff win in 3 years making the playoffs. Offensive points per game, first, fourth, first. Defense up there, right? That 28th in the bottom right corner, that was that Mike Nolan stuff that nobody wants to talk about. But he's the fourth winningest coach in Cowboys history. First in win percentage, right? So I'm going to take it a little further here, because my question is, and we'll get into it a little deeper, but in Green Bay, man, he was not bad at coaching the team. They were a pretty disciplined football team. But if you look here, like so undisciplined in Dallas, right? And one of two things has to be happening here. Either Mike McCarthy is a mole and he still works for Green Bay, or Jerry Jones is just picking the wrong players for him, right? Like, you kind of go through it. Kelvin Joseph kind of was an undisciplined player, burnt toast, right? And he kind of fell to the second round with some issues. Sam Williams off the field issues. Is Mikey equipped to handle these fringe first round picks that are falling, or is he not the coach for that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or what are we missing? Like, is Aaron Rodgers in that locker room in Green Bay the difference? Like, is Dak not the leader? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know where that really stems from, but there's something missing leadership wise, and I can't kind of pinpoint it.
But then that's tough, right? Because like when you talk Dak, like you hear like he's a leader of men. He gets the comparison to Tom Brady, and you even listen to like past players and the praise that they give Dak as far as like being a leader. So it's like we can't say we don't have a leader like that in the locker room. We have a Dak. I look at on the defensive side of the ball. No, Micah is not I guess you could say the leader per se. I still look at that as being a DeMarcus Lawrence, the way he gets guys rowdy. But then like, listen, bro, we got a Zach Martin. That's a leader.
Mm-hmm.
So then it's like it goes into that. It's like I don't think it's that either. And I don't that's a tough conversation. Like and that's the thing we're trying to figure out. Like, what is it? Is it the pressure from the media? Is it believing the hype? And I told you all year long when we was going through this roller coaster, I was like, I love being an underdog for some reason. I loved it. I hated when people was like, oh, like it seemed like every time we got too high,
Mm-hmm.
we dropped and had a terrible game. Oh, the Cowboys are 5-0, whatever. We're gonna play San Fran, drop. Oh, like we was three, I'm saying whatever it was. Then we was finally at that point. It was like, oh, we just gotta handle this stretch. We're going through the tough stretch. Buffalo, drop. And then
Miami
we beat
drop.
up, and then Miami up. We finally there. We get through Buffalo. Like we drop, and then we skate past Detroit. Uh Controversial win, but whatever. You know what I'm saying? You get the 2 seed, and then you come out there and you lay a performance like that. I think we have the leaders. We got the players, and then we got the people in place that draft well. As far as the philosophy, Dallas has historically, or not well, I would say over the last 10 years, 10 to 15, we've always took swings on players that was high risk in the second round.
Mm-hmm.
Like you try to find those first round talents, and but for whatever reason they dropped, whether it was injury. You think about Sean Lee and Jaden Smith and guys like that, or it's guys that has a little injury concern, still maybe a high end talent that you can still take a risk on and hope that you get them in the building and you can change things for them. And then speaking of that, like this draft class that we just had on
Mm-hmm.
the flip side of that,
Didn't
no,
exist.
no contribution. And that's the thing that I guess worries me the most, or maybe baffle me. Now I'm talking about in hindsight, where you went and made all of these moves. You went and got Stephon Gilmore and Brandon Cooks and all these guys. We finally felt like, yes, like it looks like we're moving the needle. We're moving the chips to the board. And then in the draft, you draft Majid Smith. I'm not calling none of these players busts by any means, but what I'm saying is day one contributors or people that can contribute to your team during a season that you felt like maybe you wanted to go for it all, right? And that's important. It's like you balance the future with the present. You draft Majid Smith. He had really no impact as far as a contributor for the season. You think about Luke Shoemaker. What I mean,
Non-existent.
you had a Jake Ferguson in place. He really didn't contribute, right? And then we can go on this list. It sucks because I felt like one of our major contributors would have been DeMarvion Overshown. Unfortunate situation, so I can't count that against him. Valim Amal for Hoko,
Nothing.
no show, right? Austin Richards. Like it was times where you probably could have put him in there. You chose to put Chuma Doga in there. You at least that way going into this next season, like what are my young guys capable of? So now in their second season is their rookie season.
Right.
Is that what we drafted for? And then you think about Jalen Brooks, no show, and we traded our 5th round pick for Eric Scott. In hindsight, what did we trade our 5th round pick for? To move up to get him, he was a no show.
Mm-mm.
You know what I mean? So it's like none of the guys that we drafted really contributed, man. And you got 7 picks to do this thing. Could just 1 or 2 of those picks maybe have been a spot to because you had drafted some linebackers. Could we got a Jake Campbell? Well, when did they get Jack? Second round?
Jack Campbell?
Or was he first? He was their first round pick.
First
So no,
round. It was like
we
pick
couldn't
18.
got that. But hats off to Detroit. I like that Detroit went out
Smash the
and
draft.
it smashed it and got the guys they wanted that they felt was going to contribute. That was the difference.
Houston too.
That was Houston too. That was a difference. Like they went in like they didn't care about position. They said, Jamar Gibbs, we know you're gonna play. We know what you're gonna contribute. Even when everybody was talking playing time. Jack Campbell, day one contributor, starting linebacker. Safety. I can't even think of his name.
Brian
right
Branch.
now. Brian Branch, beast. They knew he was gonna start.
Took Gardner Johnson's job.
Garner John took him, you know what I mean? And then like he's a day one contributor. Sam Laporta, starting tight end. They drafted 5 or more.
Traded Hawkinson, got Laporta.
5 or more starters that contributed to their season. And we drafted 0.
And it's crazy because you get 5 starters from the 99-cent store, right? Like pennies on the dollar. But you only get them pennies on the dollar for 4 to 5 years. Cowboys on the other side, we smashed the 2 drafts beforehand, right?
Yeah.
Pennies on the dollar. Now it's time to start paying them boys, though.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So like your window with that is very slim. Because now you got to kind of start looking at these guys looking for third contracts, already in their third contracts. Who's going to be able to contribute? Because third contracts get real tricky. I think the success rate of third contracts is not good.
It's not. So my thing is, what for you? What is the window? You know, like how do you feel? You know, obviously we got restructures, extensions to make. We got some tough decisions coming up. Obviously, we can't pay that cap hit of 59 mil, right? So we can kind of nip that in the bud. Dak is going to be back, whether as a fan you like it or not. Dak is a top quarterback, and that's just going to be what it is. As far as what we got going on, you obviously pay Micah, you obviously pay CD, but what does that do for everybody else? We got some tough decisions to make. Obviously, I think if we take this team right here, talent wise, yes, we're still one of the top teams in the league. But then you have a gap that's closing. You know what I mean? Like Washington is probably going to get a franchise quarterback. You just seen Green Bay with a young Jordan Love. They're going to continue to improve.
And 3 young receivers.
3 young receivers. Chicago is going to continue to improve, and the Lions another year in this thing. And you know, all of these that goes into the gap, and you can't expect teams to stay down. And I felt like that's what hurts the most. You know, the path, this is the year. Like we had a chance, not because we felt like it was our year, because I felt like our path to the Super Bowl was maybe as open as I've seen it. You know, I mean, in ever. I ain't gonna say ever, but I mean, if you think about my lifetime, I'm still young. I ain't gonna tell y'all my age, but for my foreseeable, whatever I can think back in my history of watching Dallas Cowboy football, I really felt like I was like, we got Green Bay. Next round, like I'm not really scared of Detroit. We beat them already, and let's take it to San Fran to see what happens. Like that's all I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it's tough, man.
With that being said, so Mike McCarthy doesn't get his contract extended. This is his 5th year. He has been brought back in. It's NFC Championship or bust, right? It's got to be.
Oh, for sure.
Because the tricky part too, and we don't have to really dive into the numbers. I'm sure we'll probably get more into that later on in the offseason, but we do got the East-West Shrine game on the way, the Senior Bowl, so we're going to actually be able to take a look. But Dan Quinn's defense kind of fell apart at times towards the tail end of the season.
Yeah.
At really no fault of his own, I think. What were you about to say right there?
Big games.
Big games. But the big issue is we had 0 linebackers. We had safeties play linebacker. And when we were up and everybody was in a pass situation, that worked. But when we had to put them in run fits, it was a matchup nightmare. There's a huge difference in strength and physicality when you have a safety and a linebacker out there, right? So depth at linebacker, which was one of our biggest concerns heading into the season, right? And that took off quick.
Yeah.
You lost your best corner in Trayvon Diggs, your best linebacker in LVE. Hankins was out for a bit. But also, like, as nice as Hankins has been for us, can we get a real defensive tackle? Like, can we get a guy? You know what I mean? Like, Hankins is cool, but he's like 30.
And he filled his role, which he filled he filled it well, but he's a run stuffer. And he'll give you that, you know what I mean, that play every once in a while where he can rush the quarterback and get a sack right there, but he's just a run. Like, we don't have that disruptor. Yeah, as I get the point that you're getting at.
That's what, like, bro, all I want in my lifetime is the Cowboys to have a solid center field safety, which we still need, and a defensive tackle that's a true 3-tech. Like, give me a top 3-tech defensive tackle.
But then you think about it, man, those guys are tough to come by. Those are the guys that, you know,
Howie Roseman got 2 of them.
but in those drafts, they fell to him, and they was in the top half of that draft. Like us, like that's the perks of being good but not terrible, right? When we was able to get those guys, like, and we fell in the Zeeks and Dak, like we had terrible years, and we just lucked up and was able to be there in those positions. But you think about the guys like Chris Jones and some of the top pass rushers from a defensive tackle standpoint. All of those guys are the Vita Veas. Those are in the top half of the drafts. You know what I mean? You don't just find those guys falling on trees. How hard is it to find a center field safety? You know what I mean? It's tough, and you know that that's a question that we all have. We know we need those things, but it's like where besides going out there in free agency and maybe paying up to get one, those guys just don't fall in your lap in free agency. I mean,
But
in the draft. Sorry.
it's just wild though, because Howie Roseman can wheel and deal and grab whatever he wants in the draft. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like Howie knows how to work it, but obviously we got some work to do on our defense. Our offensive line is getting old.
yeah.
That's happening. Tyler Smith has been a positive note, but led the league or led the team in penalties, right? So there's some discipline there you got to work on with him. But all in all, our window, I don't want to say it's wide open because now it's time to pay Micah, it's time to pay CD. And when you hit so well on a draft, back to back years, you got to pay the piper, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
now it's time to pay the piper. So if we don't come out and smash this draft with no salary cap left, you know what I mean? Because we got to pay our boys.
We can make some room though. And that's the weird thing about the salary cap is like you always look at that number, but it's like you can always finagle it just enough to get where they need to go to make the players they move. For me, like I mean, unless
But Jerry
uh,
can't
uh,
pay everybody.
he can't pay everybody, right?
But he likes to pay
But
everybody.
he can manipulate the cap to still go and get guys like Brandon, like not Brandon Cooks. I'm sorry, but Michael Gallup. We can do things like obviously post June cut here, Tony Pollard leads off the cap here. You extend some guys here to obviously make the cap hit lower. You restructure a few guys. And then even you paying a Dak and those guys that got those high cap hits, you extend those guys and that lowers the cap hit to front load some contracts to go and get some guys if you still want this window to be open. So for me, um, like show me this year. Like go and get a Stephon Diggs. If you want to bend Dallas, look, go get a guy. And the two things that's important to me this year, and you said it best. You talked about that linebacker position. That was Dan. It's nobody's blame because like he's the cook. And his recipe for whatever he wanted was to go and get that recipe to Will McClay and say, I wanted fast guys that can play, this style of ball. And he prioritized that. So maybe if you feel that's a weakness, then you prioritize that. You get some bigger guys, some thumpers that can come downhill. And then when you want to play those nickel packages, you get guys of that nature that can come and fill in when needed. And then let's get this run game back going, man.
Mm-hmm.
It bothered me so much during the season to just, it's like we could run and then we couldn't run. And then the tough situations, it's like we couldn't run. I kind of miss the days of, I don't miss the Jason Garrett days, but I miss the days of just having a prime Zeke just being able to, we already up 7 points. Oh, we already knew he was going to grind the game out and we was going to burn that clock and the game was over. We don't have that guy anymore.
Even
Uh,
DeMarco.
yeah, facts. We had that for a while. So, Tony Pollard, I'm sorry, it's a business. And you see all the running backs this year. Everybody that want to get paid, whether it was Eckler,
They all getting cut.
they all getting cut. None of them showed up. I'm sorry. The Dalvin Cook who left his team and thought he was going to a new team and end up on a new team, they probably ain't gonna make this. All of it sucks. It's for running backs, but you draft a guy, um, and you go get somebody. And let's get this run game going. Let's draft somebody on this offense line. I don't care. Even if Tyron Smith stays, get you some guys along this offensive line. Let's
Mm-hmm.
rebuild this thing up. Let's get the wall of Dallas going again when we was kind of getting to that point where we can grind guys down again. Let's be more physical than another team. And that's, I think, how you get the back where you need to be.
No, and I think you said it perfectly. So I think that's it from my side. You got any final words?
Nah, man. Obviously, tough loss, like we said. I mean, it's taking some time. It's taking some time just to kind of come down from this, and there's been a lot of things going on outside of that, whether it was CD, what was his mom, and Dak, was it
Brother.
not was it Dak?
Dak
No,
brother.
no, no,
Micah.
CD's it was CD brother and Micah brother.
No,
What I mean?
CD's mom talking about Dak.
CD's mom, Micah's brother, and I thought it was one more.
Dak brother.
Dak brother did come out. Yeah, he came out, but it's It's high on emotions right now. You know what I mean? And it makes sense. Like everybody has their world, but at the end of the day, I think all of these guys are, you know what I mean, in the building together. They all good friends, whatever. Um, and it's just tough. Like we just go through this year after year after year, and as much as I felt bad for myself in that moment, right? I hated it. It took me a while. I didn't even want to be on social media for the most part. But I feel bad for other Cowboy fans in general. Like we all going through this thing together. Um, and all we can do is just continue, you know what I mean, being hopeful for the next year. And that's what we here for. So this next year roll around, we're gonna be right here with y'all. We're gonna keep this obviously this optimism, and we're gonna push, and we still gonna keep this quest for six, man. That's all we can do. End zone experience. We out. Peace.